Hi everyone. I want to welcome you to today's session called What to Expect in Kindergarten, all about reading. So this session is intended just for learning coaches, just to help you feel a little bit more confident in your approach to your reading instruction with your student. All right, so the agenda is really to talk about our goals for kindergarten, to understand the developmental milestones for reading, to talk about the different components of reading, and to offer you some very specific strategies, and then we'll end with some final thoughts. So the first thing I want to ask you to think about is, how old were your children when they started to walk? Some of you might say 10 months, or 9 months, or 12 months, or 15 months. There's a lot of different answers that you would get. What about, how old were your children when they got their first tooth? So some of my children got their first teeth when they were about 6 months old, and then I had two of mine didn't get their first teeth until they're 11 months old. And then which tooth came out first? That varied as well. Some of mine, it was the bottom front tooth, and then I had one child and he got his two teeth, they were on top, but not the two middle teeth, but the two teeth beside it, so he looked like a little vampire. They were all different. And then another thing to think about is, how old were your children when they said their first word? Some people usually say right around 1 year old or maybe 6 months old. I had one that didn't say his first word until he was 2 years old. So a lot of differences. And the one that didn't start talking until he was 2 is my most articulate child today. So you can't really make judgment calls based on when they do things. And so that's what I want you to think about for reading development, because it is developmental, just like when they are learning how to walk and when they're learning how to talk. Children learn to read at different ages and progress through the reading stages at different speeds. And it doesn't mean that one is worse than the other. It just means that they're developmentally different. So it takes a while sometimes for that light bulb to turn on, and then bam, they're out the door running and reading, and the variety happens all the way up to age 7. You see a lot of differences. Some people don't have that light bulb turn on until they're 7 years old, and some people it turns on when they're 5 years old. So that's something to keep in mind as your child is learning how to read. It will help alleviate a lot of your fears if you realize the various stages of reading development. So I have witnessed this from personal experience and also from my professional experience. I had a little one a couple years ago come to me at the beginning of 2nd grade, and her 1st grade teacher said that she was reading well below grade level. And when she got to me, over one summer in between us, she was reading above grade level. The light bulb clicked over the summer, and she just took off like a rocket and was one of my highest readers. So just know that there's a lot of variety. So I want us to always keep in mind this quote. It says, "Keep the most important thing the most important thing." And during our reading instruction, the most important thing is that we want to develop a love for reading within our students. That is the most important thing. So keep it the most important thing. Don't worry about if they take too long to learn a certain sound, or if they are struggling when they are trying to blend words or they're not remembering sight words. The most important thing is that we are instilling in them a love for reading, that we are making it fun and attaching good memories to reading. So let's start by trying to get rid of some of the fears. So I'm going to list some common behaviors for kindergartners. Okay, these are common. This is normal within the reading development process. These are normal behaviors. And you would see these behaviors start to fade out anywhere between the ages of 5 and 7. So they may still, at this age, confuse letter names for letters that look similar. So if they're asked to name a B, it's okay if it's normal for them to mix it up with a D. If they're asked to say the letter P, it's normal for them to confuse it with a Q. That is a normal behavior that we just can gently correct over time, and eventually that fades away. It is normal for students to spell words related to the sounds that they hear. So if they're only really picking out that beginning sound, when they go to write that word, they may only write down the beginning sound and maybe the ending sound and leave out the middle sound. That's very normal as they are beginning to write. So some students may still prefer to write with just uppercase letters or a mix of uppercase and lowercase, and that also will start to fade away. The more exposure they have to print, the more they will understand that you only use capital letters in certain situations because they will see it. So students often confuse letters that sound similar when they're spelling. So an F and a V have a very similar sound, and it looks similar when you say it. If you say those letters in a mirror, it looks similar, so it's very common for them to mix those up when they're spelling words. Again, these are all things that will eventually fade away sometime between the ages of 5 and 7. Students often confuse letters that look similar when they're spelling. Just like up here, sometimes they say the wrong word, the wrong letter, and down here sometimes they spell the wrong letter. Some students will use spaces in between words, but a lot of the times their words can still run together at this stage. And again, the more exposure they have to print, the more they're going to understand that they need to have that space in between their words. And then another biggie that a lot of moms and dads worry about is that it is completely normal behavior for a child at this age to write their letters and numbers with reversals. Again, this can continue to occur all the way up to age 7. So after the age of 7, if you're continuing to notice that, and if that's not going away, then that's when you want to start talking about maybe some strategies that your teacher could offer you to make sure that they're writing their letters and numbers correctly. All right, so let's talk about the developmental stages of reading. So the very first one is pre-A. This is usually when they're in pre-K. Now, this year is a very unique year. I heard lots of stories from learning coaches that their students had gone to preschool for about half the year until COVID hit, and they were unable to complete the school year. And so they only got about a half of the years of instruction for preschool. So they may still find that their student is in the pre-A stage. This all depends on their developmental level, their readiness, and also their exposure to literacy skills. So you could be at any of these stages based on the the variety of experiences that you have had already. So we will talk about what each of these stages look like. But when you are picking out books for your pre-A reader, it would typically be an AA book. The next stage is the emergent, and these students are reading levels A through C in books, and that's typically when you're in kindergarten. And the next stage is early reading stage, and that's when you are reading levels D through I, and that's typically in first grade. But right now, the group of kindergartners that we have at VAVA, we're going to have a variety. We're going to have some pre-A, we're going to have some emergent, we're going to have some early, and we potentially could also have some transitional if they're reading J through P and are comprehending it very well. That's typically between second and third grade, but we might actually have some kindergartners who are ready for that by the end of the year. It all depends. We're all over the place, and it's okay. What we need to do is find out which level your child is at and make sure that we provide the resources that your child needs and the kind of instruction that your child needs. So let's talk about what some of these levels look like. So this is our goal for the beginning of the year, to be able to read a passage like this. This is level AA. So you're going to notice in level AA that there are lots of picture clues, and you're going to notice usually one sight word that's very repetitive, and then the other ones could be discovered by looking at the picture. My mouse, my bunny, my cat. And then you could focus on that beginning sound in these letters, in these words, and then find the animal that also has that beginning sound, and then that will help them to decode what these words are. So very simple, very repetitive. That's what level AA looks like. As we move towards the middle of the year, we want to get to a level A, ideally. And this is also going to use a lot of repetition. He has many things. He has 2 hands. He has $2. He has 2 flowers. And you're going to notice that a lot of repetition with some of our sight words, and then again, picture clues that help them match up that beginning sound with one of these pictures that has the same beginning sound. Okay, and then as we move past the middle of the year, you're going to see a lot more variety. Again, still using repeated text as some support, but then it's going to vary a little bit more, throwing in a sentence here or there that doesn't use the repetition to see if they're actually looking at the words, making that one-to-one correspondence, but also lots of picture clues as well. And then finally, at the end of the school year, the typical kindergarten development would be a level C. And you're going to see here that there's not as much repetition, a lot more varied sentences, but still using a lot of the sight words that they're going to be learning in kindergarten. So that gives you a picture for what the different levels look like for kindergarten. However, don't be stressed out if your child isn't at level C by the end of kindergarten, because like I said, everybody starts at a different developmental place, different developmental speeds, and your child will get there through consistent instruction. It just takes time. All right, so let's take a look at pre-A readers. Okay. We want to determine, is your child a pre-A reader, an emergent reader, or maybe even an early reader? So here's the key questions. If you are a pre-A reader, If your answers to these questions are no, then you are a pre-A reader. Does your student write their first name without a model? Does your student identify about 40 uppercase and lowercase letters? Does your student demonstrate left to right directionality across one line of print? Being able to realize that that's how you read is by going from left to right? Is your child able to hear some letter sounds, at least 8, to be able to tell, ooh, that's an M or a B sound? So if your answers to these questions are no, or you're kind of on the fence about it, then your child is probably a pre-A reader. That's the stage that they're in. And so these are the skills that we really want to focus on this year. We really want them to have a strong sense of letter names and sounds. We really want to help them with their letter formation, their phonological awareness, being able to hear syllables, rhymes, and initial consonant sounds. Just give them a good concept of print and oral language. So now if you asked yourself these questions and you said yes to most of them, that they do identify 40 uppercase and lowercase letters, that they can write their name without a model, that they do demonstrate that left to right directionality and can hear some letter sounds. If your answers are yes, then your child is probably in the emergent stage. Okay, so this is what we want to focus on for your child. Instead of focusing on the letter names, we're going to really make sure they know the letter names and sounds. We want to make sure that they are matching that one-to-one correspondent as they read, that they're following along with their finger, and as they point to a word, they say a word. So it's not just that they're memorizing it, but they're understanding that each word is something different, and that they can control left to right directionality across several lines of print, that they can actually go through a paragraph and follow along, that they use meaning, structure, and initial letters to figure out unknown words. So when they come to a brand new word, they're starting to be able to decode that. They can figure out what that beginning sound is, maybe the ending sound with some help, or they can also look at the pictures and try to figure out from what the picture is showing them or what the story is about, that they can come up and decode those words. We want to make sure they're forming all their letters correctly, that they are hearing the CVC sounds in sequence. So that's the consonant, vowel, consonant. Words like bat, map, jot, those kind of things. We want them to hear each sound, the beginning, the middle, and the end. And then as they're reading, what we want them to start to really do is monitor for meaning. So if they are making mistakes in their words and it doesn't make sense with the story, they're catching that at this stage. They're starting to realize, wait, that doesn't make sense if I say it that. So then they're rereading a sentence to correct themselves, or maybe to confirm predictions that you guys have made at the beginning of a story. And then by the end of emergent reader level, we want them to read and write about 30 sight words and be able to discuss stories. So their comprehension skills are now starting to develop. Okay, so the next stage then would be the early readers. So you want to ask yourself, does your student read a level C text with very few errors? Does your student read and write about 25 to 30 sight words? Do they solve new words by using the pictures and initial letter sounds? Do they monitor for meaning? Do they reread to assess meaning and structure? Do they hear and record the CVC sounds in sequence and maintain that one-to-one matching without prompting as they're reading? So if you're answering yes to a lot of these questions, then your child is probably in the early reader stage. So if that's the truth, if that is the stage that your child is currently in, these are the skills you want to focus on. Making sure that they can read and write a large bank of sight words. I will be providing you with several different sight word lists for you guys to use. You want to make sure they spend a lot more time, since they're not struggling so much with decoding. They're starting to get the hang of that. Now let's focus a lot more on comprehension. Really talk about what the story is about. And you want them to make sure that they're rereading if they don't understand the story. If it's not making sense, if you ask them a question and they don't know the answer, that they can go back and reread and try to find meaning within the text. They are at this stage, we want them to begin to read with fluency and expression. So you definitely don't want that robotic tone anymore at this stage. You want them to start reading a little bit more similar to how they speak. They should be able to tell you the main idea and important details in the story, and apply phonic elements to both reading and writing. So all the sounds that the letters make, that not only can they read those words, but they're starting to be able to spell them correctly because they understand the phonic rules. So there are other levels, but this is going to be typically what we're going to see in kindergarten, a variety of these 3 levels. And like I said, one is not better than the other. We're just at different stages in our development. And it's okay if you are a pre-reader. It's okay if your child is an emergent reader. And it's okay if your child is an early reader. We're going to make sure that they get what they need and can grow and develop at their pace. Okay, so now let's move into some different elements of reading. So we use a lot of big words in education, so I want to kind of define a few of them for you. So you might have heard words like phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, phonemes, phonics, and some people use all those words interchangeably, but they actually all mean different things. So let's talk about first what's phonological and phonemic awareness. So these are the skills that you're doing with your ears. You're listening to different things. You're listening to syllables. You're listening to rhyming. You're listening to the beginning and the end of words. You could do all phonological and phonemic awareness activities with your eyes closed because you're using your ears, the sense of sound. Okay? So let me give you some examples. So these are some phonological awareness skills. Having word awareness, being able to distinguish separate words in the sentence. So like when I was talking about reading by pointing to each word separately, they're understanding that the separate words create a sentence as a whole, and understanding the difference between a word and a sentence. So students that have a strong word awareness can count words in a sentence, and they can clap or stomp for each word in a sentence. So like if you remember that song that we used to sing when we were little called the Hokey Pokey, and at the very end when it says, you put your right foot in, you put your left foot in, you put your right foot in, and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. That is actually a phonological awareness activity. To be able to clap, that's what it's all about. You clap with each word. That is a really good activity to do if you can do that with your child. Another skill is alliteration. So identifying and producing words that begin with the same sound. Like Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. I had to think about that one. Here's an example. Sarah sips strawberries on Sundays. How every single word starts with the same sound. So you can make a lot of different silly sentences and practice that with your child. That is a really good skill to have because they're picking out that beginning sound. Syllable awareness, again, counting, clapping, or tapping the parts of a word into syllables. So up here, we're clapping with each word. Down here, we're starting to break apart one word into several syllables. So they were suggesting that you start with your name. Jenny, Jefferson. You know, you just start practicing with words that are very familiar to them. Okay, and then rhyming is a really important skill for them to have as well. So you can do a lot of fun games with rhyming. So being able to identify the rhyme is the first stage, and then, like they said, producing a rhyme will come later. So you could ask your child, do cat and bat rhyme? How about shoe and door? Does that rhyme? And then you can ask them to produce it later. What rhymes with pan? And then if they can't come up with something, maybe give them a couple examples until they start to catch on. So a lot of these things you could do while you're driving down the road. It's nothing that you have to have paper and pencil for. It's just that they're listening skills. So that's phonological awareness. Phonemic awareness is hearing the individual sounds in words. So it breaks it apart a little bit. When a child has phonemic awareness, he or she will be able to identify and manipulate individual sounds within the words. So being able to break apart words and blend them back together. So if you say, if we take the word pan, they should be able to eventually go p-e-n, pan. Or the opposite, you could say, what's this word? p-e-n. And they slowly figure out, blended together, that word is pan. So there's lots of different type of phonemic awareness skills. You can look through all of these. And then I also have this chart. I'm going to be sending this PowerPoint out to you so you guys will have all of these good charts. This is wonderful. This is the building blocks of phonemic awareness. So you can look at each of these skills and make sure your child is really good at each of these skills. Even if they're already beginning to read words and like to read words, you still want them to have a very strong phonological and phonemic awareness, because usually once they get to 3rd grade and they begin to start having more difficulty decoding unknown words, it usually traces back to not having a strong phonological and phonemic awareness. So we want to make sure that they're good at all of these kind of activities. All right, and some activities that you guys can do at home. One is looking at nursery rhymes. They're actually a very powerful phonemic awareness activity. Lots and lots of rhyming and just the play on words. That is a very powerful thing. Here's an activity where you could have something, a secret something in your bag, and you can say, who can guess what is in my bag? Let me peek in and see. It starts with a p and ends with an an. Who can guess for me? And then, so they would have to put that initial sound and the rhyme sound together to create the word. Another activity I see a lot of schools doing over the years when my children have been in school is they take a poem like this with lots of words that start with a certain letter, and then they go through and highlight all the B sounds. And as they're highlighting, they are making they're saying B, 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 B. And they're starting to realize that that letter is just the beginning sound of that word. There's lots of other sounds in that word too. but they're starting to separate those phonemes, which are the individual sounds within a word. Okay, and then our favorite is Dr. Seuss because he uses so much rhyming and nonsense words, and that really helps the student rely on their phonics skills to be able to say some of these words. So those are very powerful. Definitely stock up on Dr. Seuss. All right, so my tips for practicing your phonological and phonemic awareness is make it fun. These activities are very silly and fun, and it can be songs and games and use lots of dancing and movements. Make it fun. You definitely want your child to be doing this every day, so you might as well make it fun. And you only need to do it for about 15 minutes a day to make a big difference. So don't feel like you have to do it all day long. Just try to carve out about 15 minutes of your day where you're going to do a little bit of these activities. And then do it daily. Definitely the biggest powerhouse is consistency. So if you can do it daily, you're going to really make a big difference. All right, so then we've talked about phonological awareness and phonemic awareness. So then what is phonics? So how is that different? Well, phonics is connecting the sounds that you've been working with in the phonological and phonemic awareness. You're connecting those sounds to print. So now you need to use your eyes when you're doing phonics. You're going to use your ears and your eyes. You're going to take the sounds that you're hearing and connect it to an actual letter or a letter blend. All right, so that is what the difference is. So you definitely want them to understand that this S has a certain sound. And when you have a CH together, it has a certain sound. So there's lots of phonemes. There's more phonemes than there are letters in the alphabet. There's more sounds that we make. Ow, ooh, or, th, sh, ch, qu. These are several different letters put together to make these sounds, but it's actually one phoneme or one sound. So we want to make sure that they can start to connect that particular sound to that particular letter or letter grouping. Okay, so in this PowerPoint, I've also added in what is phonological awareness, what is phonemic awareness, what is phonics. You can read through that to help you understand the 3 different things that we do a lot. So, having said all that, let's talk some strategy. Let's decide on some activities that you want to do at home. I'm just going to give you a handful of ideas. There are hundreds and thousands of ideas out there. So, here's one, just a simple one where you could get a placemat that has the letter and an object that has that letter as their beginning sound. Keeping it right in front of them on their desk or hanging it on a wall so they could always reference it, so they are constantly being exposed to these letters. Using phonics flashcards. You could get this at the Dollar Tree. They always have a lot of really cute things in their education section. Check that out. My favorite kind of card is when they have the capital letter, the uppercase, and the lowercase on the same card. I want them to connect that those go together. I want them to know that if it looks like this or this, it's still the same letter. It's still a B. Okay, and then I have also offered 2 games here if your child is still working on their sounds. These both are really great. They, if you click on the letters, it will say the letter name and the letter sound, and you definitely want them to connect both. Okay, so let's say that as we were figuring this out, let's say that you decided, okay, I think my reader is a pre-A reader because they don't know very many letters, or maybe they're still a little fuzzy in this level with their sounds. They might recognize the name of the letter but not know the sounds of all the letters. So I'm going to offer something to you, a strategy that we have used at VAVA and recommended to our learning coaches over the years numerous times, and we have seen excellent results. So this is called the Sound Card Quick Drill. So I'm actually going to send to you some flashcards that you could print if you would like, or you could go to the Dollar Tree or Walmart or find some online and order your own. But I will give you a set just in case you would just rather print those. The set that I'm going to offer you does have that uppercase and lowercase and offers you several different pictures, and they all start with that letter sound. Okay, so step 1 in the Sound Card Quick Drill. First, we want to make sure that we can determine which letters and sounds that they already know and which ones they don't. So you can present them with this card and you can say, what letter is this? If they say M, and you could say, what sound does that make? If they can tell you M, then you put that in the pile for your known letters and sounds. Okay, come to the next one. What letter is this? I don't know that one yet. Okay, no problem. We'll put this over here. Unknown letters. Okay, what's this one? I? Oh, nope, that's one that we get to practice. Okay, let's put this over here. What about this one? I don't know. I don't know that one yet. Oh, good. Okay, we'll practice that one too. Okay, what about this one? E. What does that sound like? Eh. We'll put that in the known. D. Duh. Put that in the known. And so you're going to find which ones they know and which ones they don't. So you're going to have 2 piles, okay? So now, step 2 is you're only going to work on 1 to 3 of these unknown letters each week. We're not going to practice all of them at once. We're just going to pick out 1 to 3, okay? So what you want to do, step 3, use letter cards with beginning sound pictures, just like these that I'm showing you here. So the learning coach will open up the card, show it to the student, and say L. I would point to the uppercase and the lowercase. I'd say L, L, lion, L. L, L, lion, L. And then the child says it. L, L, lion, L. Okay, then you go to the next one. Q, Q, quarter, Qu. And then the child repeats you. Q, Q, quarter, Qu. And then you say G, G, grape, G. And they say G, G, grape, G. And you do this about 3 times a day for a whole week. Okay? And at the end of that week, we're going to take out these cards and you're going to say, tell me about this card. And they're going to hopefully offer L, L, lion, L. Because you have practiced it at least 15 to 18 times that week. Some of these, when you want somebody to learn something and keep it in their long-term memory, you need to be repeating it consistently. Okay, so let's say they remember that one all by themselves without any prompting from you. High five, way to go, good job. We're going to put it over here. Okay, then you present them with the next one. What's this one? Q, Q, quarter. I don't remember what it sounds like. Okay, no problem. We're going to keep that over here. How about this one? G, G, grape, G. Wonderful. We're going to put that over here. And then the next week, we're going to keep this unknown one and maybe add 2 more that they don't know yet. And we're going to repeat this every day. We pull them out 3 times a day. Q, Q, quarter, qua. Maybe it's R, R, rainbow, R. Maybe S, S, star, S. And you do that 3 times a day, 5 to 6 days a week. And then on the last day of the week, you pull them out, you let them try it all by themselves. If they haven't mastered, you put it in the known letter pile. And feel free to practice these and make sure that they haven't forgotten any of them every once in a while. And it gives them confidence when they see that this pile is getting much bigger. Okay, so very powerful activity. If you do this consistently, I guarantee you, your child is going to learn their letters and their sounds. Okay, and then I wanted to explain a little bit about why this activity works. We are incorporating something called errorless learning. That means there's no possible way for them to make a mistake at the beginning because you're telling them the answer and then they're repeating it. You're telling them the answer, then they're repeating it. So there's no fear in the repetition because they just heard it and they can repeat it. Okay, so there's errorless learning. And when you, studies have shown that that's the kind of learning that you need to do. Let's say if somebody has a stroke and they're trying to relearn how to use their hand, you use errorless learning to teach them that. Or if a person who might be autistic and they're trying to learn their daily behaviors and remember what they have to do every morning, you teach them with errorless learning. First we brush our teeth. They say, first we brush our teeth. And it's just lots of repetition, lots of consistent repetition, and then they will start to remember in their long-term memory. Okay, and then another reason why this works really well is it uses multiple modalities. So we are looking at the letter and we are hearing the sound. Looking and hearing, which is why I like those other 2 links that I shared earlier. One is like a refrigerator and they have all these magnets that you could put on the refrigerator. You're going to see the letter and you're going to hear the sound that it makes. So you're going to be seeing it, hearing it, saying it. It's very repetitive, so it's going to definitely work. Okay, so let's say that they have learned all their letters and sounds. So now we're going to move on and flip it. We can do the sound card quick drill in reverse. And this is a nice little assessment to make sure that they got it. So instead of asking them what we were doing before, they're going to have all the cards and you're going to say, what says M? What says M? And then the student is going to look through their cards and he's going to remember, oh yeah, M, monkey, M. So they're going to produce it. They're pulling it from their long-term memory. And I tell you what, that is going to stick. So definitely use these activities. Okay, so now when we were learning about phonics, I wanted to tell you that 80% of the written language is phonetically correct, which is great, right? Except for the other 20% that's not. So we, as educators, really encourage people to memorize sight words. So one group of sight words is called Dolch sight words. And a program that I started last year with my 2nd graders was the rainbow words. And I have a few of you in this class whose sibling was doing the rainbow words with me. So I'm going to send these out just for your reference so you can see what they are. The red rainbow words are really usually learned in pre-K level, and then the orange rainbow words are usually learned in the kindergarten level. So just keep in mind that by the end of kindergarten, the expectation is that they would remember maybe 20 to 30 of these. They're not going to remember all of them most likely unless you are very consistent at practicing. And you know what? You could do the quick sound, the, what's that called again? Sound card quick drill with your sight words. You could do the same concept with sight words to help them learn those. So think about that. I will definitely be sending these out to you so you can have them. That is another really, really helpful thing for your beginning reader, because if they have 20% of the text already memorized by knowing their sight words, it's going to make the rest of the sentence easier, so they don't have to decode quite so much. Okay, and I also want to encourage you finally to be using lots of kinesthetic and tactile experiences with your students. Yes, it makes a mess. let's just be honest. Most of these are messy activities, especially this one where you put shaving cream all over a cookie sheet and then they write their letters with their finger in the shaving cream, or filling up a bucket of sand, giving them a letter card and they have to write their letter. But children learn best with kinesthetic and tactile experiences. Anything that they can touch and move and manipulate, they remember at a deeper level in their brain. Okay, so just remember, if you do anything like this, it is extremely valuable. So definitely I recommend it. All right, so some final thoughts. As your child is learning to read, I really want you to remember that if parents are patient as their child is reading, the children will be patient with themselves. If the parents are impatient and jump in really quick and help them with every word that they start to struggle with, it actually creates anxiety in children because they are so nervous that their mom is going to jump in real fast if they don't know the word quickly. So we have to hold ourselves back and let them have that moment of, I don't know that word. So you put it back on them and say, okay, well, try to sound it out. What's that beginning sound? What's that beginning letter? You know, let them, you can prompt them gently, but we have to be patient in these moments and let them try it out. Let them take a while to try it out and figure it out. So we don't want to create that anxiety. And it's also true that if we jump in and give them the answer every time they struggle, they're going to learn, okay, I don't have to struggle with this because if I just pause for a minute, mom's going to give me the answer. They learn very quickly that they can be a little bit lazy because mom or dad's going to jump in and give me the answer. So if they start to do that, continue to put it back on their lap and say, what do you think it is? What sound do you think it is? You give it a try. And one of my favorite things that I usually say is, I've already done kindergarten. It's your turn now. So definitely we want to be providing lots of repetition and concepts so these activities will help them secure the phonemic and phonological and phonics skills deep into their brain. Okay, so definitely only offer help when it's really truly needed. Let your child share the reading with you. Maybe you can point to words that they know in a sentence and you could read the harder ones. As you're doing reading sessions, it is uncomfortable for children because there is such an uncomfortable feeling when you are faced with something you don't know. So just, keep it short at first, and then you can start to extend it over the year as they start to be a little bit more comfortable with being uncomfortable. Okay, encourage your child to track the print with his finger. We really want to make sure they're understanding that one-to-one correspondence when they're reading. We want to encourage our children to read more than just books. help them to recognize print in their world, that it's everywhere on signs and cereal boxes. Give them lots of practice, lots of review. Be consistent. Remember, consistency is where the power is. Reading the same books multiple times is really powerful because they start to remember, and then they can start to build confidence as they read the words that they are remembering. And remember that all children are different. Reading is developmental, just like walking, just like talking. So be patient with your child as they develop. Be positive and encouraging. Remember, never let them see you sweat. If you start to get upset, go to the next room, take a breath or two, and come back. And definitely talk with your children, because as you're talking, they're understanding the concept of words and sounds and how it all fits together. All right, and remember, keep the most important thing the most important thing. We want to develop a love for reading in our students. If what we're doing is making them cry, making them mad, frustrated, pull it back. Do something fun. Do something that they enjoy. Do something that's tactile. Do something that's sweet. Cuddle up on a couch and read a story to them. Make sure that we are developing that love for reading. First and foremost, most important thing above everything else. Okay? All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to this recording. I'm sorry we weren't able to meet together in person today, but I appreciate you coming, and I will talk to you more later. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful day.